We have noted with great concern that the ambassadors of the United States, European Union, and the United Kingdom have conspired to attack our government, its officials, and by so doing, the citizens of the Republic. Over the past few weeks, we have heard them making inflammatory allegations that the suffering of the people in Zimbabwe and the destruction of the economy has been caused by corrupt senior officials. Allegations that they've taken from the media, yet they have not been tested in a competent court or tribunal. And yet they know that the illegal sanctions that they've imposed on the nation of Zimbabwe are making that economy scream. This is a contravention of the Vienna Convention that lays out the practices, customs, and principles that govern the diplomatic relations between nations. It is also against the Constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe that states clearly that a person is innocent until proven guilty after they've had an opportunity to defend themselves and test allegations against them. Therefore, it is slanderous for the diplomats of these nations to call any Zimbabwean, in particular the senior representatives of the people, corrupt or criminals without any competent court making such a determination. It is becoming clear from the conduct of this Berlin cabal that they have no regards for international law, the laws of our country, and human rights. This is the reason why the same cabal has imposed illegal unilateral sanctions upon Zimbabwe, violating 16 million human rights and the UN Charter. Non-white peoples across the world have become accustomed to this level of abuse from the same countries that enslaved millions of our ancestors, colonized our nation in pursuit of resources, but till today, not a single one of them has paid a cent in reparations or restitution for their unjust enrichment, gross corruption, and genocide. In the past century, this very same axis of evil has murdered more than 100 million people in wars that they brought upon the world for resources and control of financial systems. Before that, the United States wiped out 15 million American Indians. They took their land, mineral wealth, and labor and established a country through European colonial laws on the back of a crime against humanity. Hunting licenses were given to kill more than 1 million Aboriginal people in order to set up the crime against humanity that is known as Australia today. The British Empire was able to commit genocides all across the world and to build a nation founded on dark-skinned people's blood. These are the same nations that today, just after 18 years of this century, have butchered more than 1 million women and children in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Yemen for oil. Now the United States president openly says that the US oil companies deserve Iranian oil that they acquired by massacring women and children. And we in Africa have not forgotten that in the last 30 years, they were the catalyst for the deaths of more than 5 million Congolese people for their coltan, cobalt, and tantalite. None of these nations can be policemen for human rights because they are the biggest violators of international law. Now they want to bring destabilization to Zimbabwe through the economic warfare that they imposed on 16 million people to push them to overthrow the government and replace it with puppet leadership that will take back the nation's land and resources and give it to a few Western countries and companies. And now that the regime change agenda is not succeeding, the ambassadors of the Berlin Conference have begun to provoke our government, sponsoring dissent, taking sides along tribal lines to destabilize the country and seek grounds to invade. In the United States itself, the black people of that country do not enjoy economic, cultural, and social development rights. Because in that country, the policemen shoot and murder black people for the colors of their skin. Black Lives Matter activists continue to disappear and continue to be found murdered ever since that country's security apparatus said that they were a threat to national security. These are not nations that can impose human rights upon the world, because these white supremacists believe that only white people deserve human rights and non-white people are the property of white people. This is why it's shocking that Brian Nicholas, the American ambassador, can be such an unconscious house nigger who will speak of rights violations in Zimbabwe without ever talking about the more than 400 black people, his brothers and sisters, that are murdered every single year in America by a white supremacist police force for the colors of their skin. For God's sake, nigga, your government doesn't even see you as an American. They see you as an African. This is the reason why they were not able to compensate your ancestors for the contribution that your ancestors made in building America. So why would you serve these rednecks and do their dirty work for them? I wonder how you can stand up against Zimbabwe, which has no ruling against it for human rights violations by any international court, multilateral institution, or human rights council. But yet you serve a government that kills women and children, millions of women and children, for oil. A government upon which the International Court of Justice has just made a ruling that says that they are violating human rights through their unilateral coercive measures that deny women, children access to medicine, healthcare, and sanitation in Iran. The same violations that you are presiding over in Zimbabwe. The investigators of International Court of Justice have indicated that they want to investigate the United States Army for the crimes against humanity that they perpetrated in Afghanistan. And your government has responded by threatening them with sanctions and arrest if they investigate the United States. Western powers are a tyranny unto the world. This is why we as Zimbabweans unite against US war sanctions, are taking a stance against this terror that was brought against the world the moment the doctrine of discovery proclaimed that the world belongs to white men and every other thing and person in it is the property of white people. We would like to enjoin other human rights groups, pressure groups, and civil activists across the world to stand with us in fighting against white aggression, to stand with us for non-white human rights, their rights to property, and protection from race wars for resources. I enjoin the government of Zimbabwe to démarche these ambassadors and to tell them to withdraw their racist, stereotypical statements. We want them to understand that Zimbabwe is not a Western colony, and we will not tolerate white supremacy in our country, even when it is administered by a house nigger. And if they do not take heed to the words that we are giving, we are going to educate our people and mobilize them to fight for the shutting down of these embassies and the dismissal of these viceroys that are in our country. We would rather Western nations attack our country directly for its resources than to demonize our government, divide the nation, and bring us into civil unrest for them to have grounds to invade our country. This is my country. This is our country. It is not a hive in which the bees need to be smoked for someone to take the honey. Zimbabweans, let us unite and protect this nation and the resources and legacy of our children. Pambere nekubatana.